Before we start, I want to commend former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo for designating the Chinese Communist Party as being engaged in genocide and crimes against humanity when it comes to the Uyghur and the Turkic population there in China, and also want to applaud Secretary of State Blinken for upholding that determination. In May, Congressman Michael McCaul asked John Kerry, the Biden administration's special envoy for climate change, the following, quote, "Can you assure us that slave labor coming out of China, where genocide is taking place as we speak, are never a part of the climate solution in the United States?" And in that hearing, Special Envoy Kerry acknowledged and said that, quote, "Solar panels, in some cases, are being produced by forced labor." Ms. Abbas, do you agree with assessments that solar panels produced in China are often produced using slave labor?
She is here.
Yes, I'm
Ms.
here.
Abbas.
Sorry, I didn't realize that I was muted. Thank you for that question. Yes, the panels and the solar panels are coming from the Uyghur region, and the Uyghur forced labor is inside the solar supply chain, where the Uyghurs are forced to mine quartz in the desert to create solar panel cells. And these companies also buy lots of the Uyghurs for their manufacturing process. So in order to fight this normalization of modern day slavery, we should pay attention to every industry, including solar panel. And you made a really good point here, Senator, about the climate change. While Chinese regime is not paying attention to human beings, they are killing people, they are running active genocide, they're conducting active genocide. Are they going to care for climate change? And they always, when we engage with any kind of conversation with China, including the climate change, China's crimes against humanity should be up in the forefront, because many companies, they are making money from the Uyghurs' blood, sweat, and the tears for their economic advantage, and the lobbying against the those interests.
Yes, I appreciate that point, and I'm very concerned, as are you, that we place our pressure toward green policies and climate agenda ahead of slave labor and human rights. And I think we all know that slave labor, Uyghur slave labor, is used not only to create the solar panels, but also to mine the coal. A tremendous amount of coal is burnt, takes a tremendous amount of energy to create these silica panels. And we are in a situation, I hope that we can avoid being in a situation where we are putting, again, green policy ahead of human rights and supporting slave labor that is being promoted by the Chinese Communist Party against the Uyghur population. I'd like to turn to history for a moment. The Chinese Communist Party is aggressively pursuing a policy of systematically repressing multiple ethnic minority groups, including Tibetans, Uyghurs, Mongolians, and ethnic Koreans. Today, what we call China has a long and complex history, including many diverse ethnicities and cultures, many changes in geographic borders. This question is for Dr. Zenz. Dr. Zenz, how did the Chinese Communist Party use and abuse China's complicated history to advance the Chinese Communist Party's geographic, ethnic, and cultural claims, and even justify the party's heavy-handed approach towards ethnic minorities in China?
I think one of the most pertinent cases for this is the fact that in a recent Chinese state media documentary, a number of well-known Uyghur intellectuals and textbook editors were paraded with shaven heads and prison clothing, having been sentenced to long prison terms over government-approved textbooks that were published several years ago for supposedly promoting pan-Turkism and separatism, and now languishing in prison. And the Chinese government has embarked on a strong propaganda strategy to argue that the Uyghurs have always been Chinese. Pan-Turkism is the expression used for giving testimony to the Turkic heritage of the Uyghurs, who are, manifestly a Turkic people with a Turkic language and ethnicity, etc. However, any association with the Turkic roots and supposedly in opposition to the Chinese roots is now being punished as a crime. And people are even put into prisons and internment camps and re-education camps for doing so. So China's engaging sort of this, and of course Chinese academics are actively rewriting history. Of course they have been, but it's become even more intensified. Similar things are happening in Tibet. Tibet's always been part of China. But in Xinjiang, it's become particularly extreme, with parading these intellectuals and textbook editors, and now they're confessing their crime just for including like Uyghur children's stories. And it's sort of standard Uyghur literature in textbooks which were government approved.
Yep. Thank you, Dr. Sens.